Good morning. Can you hear me? Well, I have to tell you, after listening to Ronnie and Judith and Marius, I'm not so sure I have anything to say. I think we've covered it all on Collective Impact. I have to tell you, I am so excited to be here. It has been a dream of mine to come to Israel. This is my first time in Israel. The weather could be a little better, but I'm very happy to be here. And thank you so much, Ronnie, and to Dushi and to Deborah for hosting this incredible conference on Collective Impact. What a joy. What an indulgence to speak about this new concept that actually isn't that new. We'll get to that in a minute. But I'm so excited to share with you some of the things that we've been learning, but I'm also anxious during the breaks to hear from you because you are already driving on Collective Impact. So many of the initiatives that I've heard about today and before are exciting. And to come to this conference where the theme is to initiate change, impact on Collective Impact is fantastic. So thank you. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Collective Impact, as well as this idea of system leadership. I want to stay away from the jargon. Collective Impact is a little bit of a jargony word. We'll move away from that. I want to be simple. I want to be clear, because the idea is very powerful. So if I'm not simple and clear, you tell me. Okay? So, at my organization, which is called FSG, if you're curious about what FSG stands for, if you care, FSG stands for Foundation Strategy Group. We changed the name many years ago because we no longer only work with foundations. We work with nonprofits, we work with government, and we work with the private sector. But my organization, FSG, we ask a lot of questions. We're a very curious group of people. And probably the most profound question we've asked, and I'm going to ask you, what is keeping us from making real progress against the intractable problems that we face every day? All of us in the room should be thinking about that. What is keeping us from making progress? I've been in the social sector for about 25 years. And at FSG, we've worked with many foundations and nonprofits around the globe. And we see the reasons why progress doesn't happen. We hear many things. There's not enough money. Government doesn't work. People don't care enough. You don't have the talent. The list goes on and on. Does anybody want to throw anything out? Fear. I like it. Thank you. What else? Why? What's preventing us from making progress on change? Anyone? Ego. Yeah. Yes. Other things. One more time. Yeah. I can't hear you. Politics. Always politics. Well, I would say to you, what we have seen, the number one reason why we see progress not happening is because we think in terms of isolated impact. Okay? Isolated impact. And this is something that we have seen over and over again in FSG over the last 15 years, where we've worked with hundreds of organizations trying to change problems. You know, In the United States, there are 1.5 million organizations, nonprofits. And that number has grown by about 30% over the last 10 years. I don't know the number exactly in Israel, but I would guess that the number of organizations has grown probably by 30% or more. It's happened in almost every country. And I think it's because we have a mindset. We have to own this. All of us have a mindset of isolated impact. Think about it. We do a lot of work for the Gates Foundation, for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. I watch how the Gates Foundation works. Oftentimes, they will meet an individual, they'll meet an organization, they will get excited that that one organization can solve a problem like malaria, or education, or sanitation, and money goes to that organization. That's really the pattern of how the social sector works. This is kind of the idea that we've seen over and over again, and where this idea of collective impact was born. And really at the root of this idea of isolated impact is the way that we actually look at social problems. Hold on one second here. There we go. So, again, at the root of this idea of isolated impact is the way all of us look at social problems. And what we've seen over and over again is that we tend to look at problems in terms of them being very simple, like baking a cake. There's a recipe that you follow, and you make a cake. Sometimes it's a good cake, sometimes it's not so good, but you have a cake. Other times we look at problems as complicated, like sending a man to the moon. There are protocols, there are technical issues that you have to overcome, but then you solve them. Rarely do we look at problems as complex, like raising a child. Who in the room has a child? Who's a father or a mother? I have a son. His first day of school was yesterday. I'll tell you, that is not a simple problem. That's not a complicated problem. It's a complex one. There really aren't any rules. The path is unknown. This is really what is at the core of isolated impact, is that we as a sector tend to look at problems as they are simple or complicated and not complex, when in reality, all the problems that were discussed already around education or social mobility, these are complex problems. And one organization that has one slice of the solution cannot solve that. So what we think about is a way to address the complex problems, is this idea of collective impact. And what we ask is it possible? What if organizations could come together as they're addressing these complex problems? Understand the problem together. Create a roadmap for change together. Measure progress together. Would it be possible then to actually solve some of these problems that we see every day? That's where the collective impact idea has come from. And what is remarkable is that this isn't theory. This isn't something that comes from a university or imposed from the outside. This is happening. I'm a guy who wants to see action. We're seeing real change happen across many different sectors and many different organizations involved. I'll share a few. The first, an education initiative in Cincinnati, Ohio. Many of the examples I'm going to give you are from the United States, But we're seeing others now come from Australia and Canada. But in the United States and Cincinnati, where the education situation in that particular city was a tragedy. A very large percentage of the kids did not graduate. They tried many different initiatives. After-school programs, getting parents involved, reducing the size of the classroom. Over and over and over, things didn't work. Things only changed when about 300 organizations came together and figured out what it would take to bring a child from 2 to 3 years old to graduation. And how do you measure that progress? And they've had astounding progress. That initiative is called Strive. Write it down. And you should Google it when you get back at your computer. It's in Cincinnati. Another initiative that's called Shape Up Somerville. I live in Boston, and a town right next to Boston is called Somerville. And we see a horrific problem there, a problem that is in many cities across the United States, of obese children. Okay? Children under the age of 10 years old, like my son, who are technically and medically obese. Once again, this city of 80,000 people, many of them low income, and immigrants from Brazil and Haiti, they tried many interventions, doing things in schools, educating parents, restricting the type of foods that kids could eat. Single initiatives of isolated impact. It wasn't until 70 organizations came together and put together a plan that involved the schools, that involved the media, that involved new parks, that involved the mayor's office. And the results have been astounding. Across the board, for kids in that age group, there has been a statistical reduction in the obesity situation where it hadn't happened before. A third example is my favorite. I wish we had time. I wish I had time to tell you the story of what we saw in New York State. A horrific problem with kids under the age of 18 being put into jail for petty crimes, stealing tennis shoes, sneakers. So many kids locked up, and a system that was really all of us, if we worked for 2 weeks together, we couldn't create a system that was more hurtful to kids and costing the state $300,000 per kid with a 98% recidivism rate, which means the kids go right back. That's New York State. That's New York State. The state tried everything. Once again, single interventions of isolated impact. It wasn't until they came together with organizations that in some cases had never talked to each other, people in the room who were suing each other, swearing at each other, angry, detention, probate, child protective services, etc., etc. It wasn't until they came together, created a new vision that was truly helpful for kids did things change. And in 2 years, for the first time, there's been a drop of 25% in the number of kids who are detained. This is not magic. This is not theory. It's happening. It's going to happen here. Now, how did all this happen? We don't have a whole lot of time to go into it, but I think all of us have been part of collaboratives, networks. What's different about collective impact that can bring about these types of results? Well, collective impact actually has rules of engagement. What we call, this is rigorous collaboration. This is different collaboration than probably anybody has participated in. It has 5 conditions. I'm going to go through them quickly. Does anybody know any of the 5? One? All right. You're laughing. So the first is a common agenda. And again, I'm going to go through these quickly. And these are relatively simple. But this is a common understanding amongst a cross-sectoral group of organizations of what the problem is that you're trying to solve. And real commitment over time to work on that problem together with shared goals. Okay? This is the common agenda that's put together. It's not easy to create. It sounds easy, but I've worked with organizations, sometimes this can take 6 months to bring together 50, 70, 100 organizations to agree on what the problem is to be solved. Second, shared measurement. This is an agreement on the measures of success and an agreement to create a short list of indicators that will be measured and learned from across a group of stakeholders. The third is mutually reinforcing activities. This is a division of labor. This moves away from competition. Who's the best at doing any particular piece, whether it's education or health or juvenile detention? The fourth is continuous communication. I've been part of collective impact efforts that meet once a month, and they have been meeting once a month for 4 years. That's a little different than the type of communication that we're used to. But organizations want to be part of that because things begin to move. And the last is a backbone organization. And what that is a organization that's neutral, that facilitates the collective impact, brings data to the table, and ensures that strong facilitation happens. These are the 5 conditions of collective impact. They're not magic. They're very hard to do. This is some of the hardest work I've ever done. And there's more to the story. But brought together, they can truly transform problems. We've seen it happen. The next topic I wanted to share with you very briefly is something which is relatively new for us, and that's really looking at the people behind collective impact. After we started getting involved in many efforts and people calling and learning together, we soon asked questions. Who are the people behind these types of rigorous collaboration? What is a system leader? It's quite different than an entrepreneur or a strong leader of a single organization. This is our newest research, and there are articles on this which we can send to you. I don't have a whole lot of time to talk about this, but just to share a number of the ideas about the people, the leaders of collective impact. What we find is that the people who lead collective impact really do 3 things. These systems leaders. 1, they create an opportunity for shared aspirations. Secondly, they provide space for deep dialogue and understanding. And third, they provide context, and they allow the group to see the system that they're in. These are the 3 hallmarks of a systems leader. And what we find once we started understanding a bit of these 3 hallmarks, we asked questions of these leaders. And we found out that what they do is they don't look at problems in the way that we probably do. And the way we usually do is over here on the left. We're often very reactive. We do some analysis, we make a decision, and we act. That's how we're taught in school often. What these systems leaders do is they go much deeper. They take data and they create new insights from it by spending more time, observing more, ensuring that there is the space to go deeper, and they prototype. They quickly try different things. So what you have here on the right is a much, much deeper learning process. And again, we have more on this if you're curious. But this is what system leaders do. They go much deeper in terms of understanding the problem. And they see the system, not just their own organization, in different ways. They use different tools like systems mapping, where they create a map of the organizations that touch them so they have a better understanding of where they fit so they can make change that's truly at scale. They put themselves into situations where they truly understand the people who exist in that system, whether it's the beneficiaries or their partners. And third, they're very good at creating vision. And they use tools such as appreciative inquiry, which is a tool that we use. And that's something I would write down as well. It's the hallmark of every great collective impact effort, is where you put a group into a room and you allow them to think what things will look like 5 or 10 years into the future. We've done this with groups that you'd never think would be open to that, and it's been transformative. These are some of the tools that system leaders employ. And there's a different mindset that they bring, these systems leaders, to their organizations and to their partners. They don't look at technical solutions. They're constantly looking at what is changing and the necessity to adapt. This one is the second one I think is the most interesting, where so much that we've heard about in the social sector is about evidence, facts, data. When a systems leader puts the emphasis on relationships, building those relationships that exist in that greater system. They don't look at single interventions as a magic or a silver bullet. They try many things. Learn and then adapt. And the ego, this gentleman over here said that at the beginning. They put the ego aside. And they share the successes, which is a true hallmark of a systems leader and of collective impact. So mindset, I think, is a fundamental issue. So we're just about out of time, and I could talk longer. I would love to hear from you, and I hope we have an opportunity to hear more from you during the break, because this is just the beginning, really, of some of these very, very tricky concepts. But what I think is interesting is that, so much we think about collective impact and system leadership as being new concepts. They're not new. They're not new at all. They're actually quite ancient. We actually forgot, I think, in a lot of ways, of how to work together on really tough problems. So I wanted to end my wonderful engagement with you with this quote that's 2,500 years old, that really talks about, I think, the essence of collective impact and the essence of systems leadership. That's about being in service to the opportunity to make a change. So with that, I want to thank you. I want to thank Ronnie and certainly Dushi, and look forward to talking with you. Thank you.